The rain battered New York City streets. But inside my apartment, the silence was louder. My husband, Ethan, stood by the door, his suitcase packed, his eyes avoiding mine. "I'm in love with Caleb," he said, and my world shattered because Caleb was my best friend. I'd known Caleb since college. The kind of friend who'd stay up all night listening to my dreams of opening a bakery, who'd laugh until we cried over stupid inside jokes. Ethan, with his warm smile and promises of forever, had been my anchor for 5 years. Together, they were my everything until they became each other's. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. A double-edged knife slicing through trust and love. I stood frozen, staring at the man I'd vowed to spend my life with, now confessing he'd been sneaking around with the one person I'd trusted as much as him. "How long?" I whispered, voice cracking. Ethan's silence was answer enough. The next morning, I dragged myself to work at Sterling & Co., a high-end marketing firm where I was a junior copywriter. My desk was a mess of crumpled Post-its and half-finished campaign ideas, mirroring the chaos in my heart. My boss, Julian Sterling, was the opposite: cold, precise, and intimidatingly brilliant. At 35, he ran the firm like a machine, his sharp jawline and piercing gray eyes making him look more like a model than a CEO. Everyone whispered about his ruthless efficiency and lack of warmth, but I'd always admired his focus. That morning, though, I could barely focus on the pitch I was supposed to present. "Elliot," Julian's voice snapped me out of my daze. He stood over my desk, his tailored suit pristine, his expression unreadable. "Your draft for the Lawson account is late. Care to explain?" I stammered, the weight of last night's betrayal spilling into my words. "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling. It's been a rough night." His gaze lingered, not softening but searching, like he could see the cracks I was trying to hide. "Get it done by noon," he said, turning away. I thought that was the end of it. But Julian didn't let it go. At noon, he called me into his office, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. "Your work's been slipping," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This isn't you." I wanted to snap that he didn't know me, that he was just a boss who barely acknowledged my existence outside of deadlines. But something in his tone, calm, almost concern, made me falter. "I'm going through something personal," I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. He didn't push, just nodded. "Take the afternoon. Fix it. And don't let it happen again." It was the closest thing to kindness I'd ever seen from him. Days turned into weeks, and the pain of Ethan and Caleb's betrayal festered. I'd see them on social media, posting photos from rooftop bars, their smiles a punch to my gut. Meanwhile, I threw myself into work, trying to drown the hurt. Julian noticed. He started giving me bigger projects, ones that forced me to stay late, to think creatively. One night, as we worked on a campaign for a luxury watch brand, he stayed past midnight, something he rarely did. "You're better than this brooding version of yourself," he said, handing me a coffee. His fingers brushed mine, and I froze, startled by the warmth in his usually cold demeanor. That moment marked a shift. Julian began checking in, not just on my work, but on me. He'd ask about my day, offer sharp-witted advice on campaigns, or leave a pastry on my desk from the bakery downstairs, always without a word. I started to see past his icy exterior, catching glimpses of a man who hid his own scars, Rumors swirled that Julian had lost someone years ago, someone he'd loved deeply, but no one dared ask. I didn't either, but I felt a connection growing, fragile yet undeniable. One evening, after a grueling client meeting, Julian found me in the break room, staring at my phone. Caleb had texted, asking to meet, claiming he missed our friendship. My hands shook as I typed a reply, torn between anger and longing for closure. Julian sat across from me, silent for a moment. "You don't owe him anything," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "People who hurt you don't get to dictate your healing." I looked up, stunned by the intensity in his eyes. For the first time, I saw not just my boss, but a man who understood pain. We started spending more time together, not just at work, but outside it. A late-night coffee run turned into a walk through Central Park, where Julian admitted he'd always wanted to try my baking. I laughed, surprised, and invited him over to my tiny apartment. That night, as we fumbled through a recipe for cinnamon rolls, flour dusting his perfect suit, I saw him really smile for the first time. It was soft, unguarded, and it made my heart ache in a way I hadn't felt since Ethan. But Ethan wasn't done haunting me. One afternoon, he showed up at the office, his face a mix of guilt and desperation. "I made a mistake," he said, voice breaking. "Caleb and it's not working. I want you back." I stood there, heart pounding, torn between the life I'd known and the one I was starting to imagine. Julian, who'd overheard, stepped between us, his presence commanding. "Elliot's moved on," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Ethan left, and Julian turned to me, his expression unreadable. "You deserve better," he said, and in that moment, I realized he meant himself. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Julian and I grew closer, our late-night talks turning into stolen glances and tentative touches. He was still my boss, still guarded, but every gesture a hand on my shoulder. A quiet, "I'm here," felt like a promise. I started to heal, not just from Ethan's betrayal, but from the fear that I wasn't enough. Julian showed me I was. One night, at a company gala, everything changed. The rooftop venue glittered under the city skyline, and Julian looked devastating in a black tux. We danced, his hand steady on my waist, and for the first time, I felt safe. "I don't do this," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "But you make me want to try?" My heart raced as I looked into his eyes, seeing not just the cold boss, but a man who'd chosen me, flaws and all. Then Caleb crashed the gala, drunk and belligerent, shouting about how I'd stolen Ethan's love. The room froze, but Julian stepped forward, calm and unyielding. "You lost him long before he left," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "And you don't get to hurt him anymore." Caleb stormed out, and Julian pulled me close, his arms a shield against the world. In that moment, I knew I was falling for him not out of revenge, but because he saw me, truly saw me. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Ethan, apologizing again, begging for a second chance. I stared at it, then deleted it. I didn't need his promises anymore. I had Julian, who'd quietly rebuilt my heart with every small act of care. We weren't perfect, his walls were still there, and my wounds were still healing, but together, we were something real. Months later, I opened my bakery, a dream I'd almost forgotten. Julian was there, cutting the ribbon with me, his smile brighter than the sun. Caleb and Ethan faded into the past, their betrayal a distant sting. I'd found love again, not in the ashes of revenge, but in the quiet strength of a man who'd chosen me when I'd forgotten how to choose myself. As we stood in the bakery, surrounded by the scent of fresh bread and the warmth of new beginnings, Julian took my hand. "You're home," he whispered, and I knew he wasn't just talking about the bakery.